You're live. I think
Then
the
me at
other
just.
one, we'll introduce them as we go along.
Hmm.
Uh,
And we are live. It's another
we're
free
live.
flow Saturday.
Yep, we're here.
Hmm.
Got myself some hot cup of tea, or
Hmm.
rather, this is coffee. Rather, yeah, it's actually coffee.
Mhm. Hmm.
Ah, yes, good stuff. So, how has your week been? What has been on your mind this past week?
My week has been occupied by Formula One. Man. Every team has already launched their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
In by March, we are ready to rumble. The race begins.
Mm.
Hmm.
So where is it gonna be starting? I know bring me up
Hmm.
to speed. I've been following a little bit of Formula One. I see now
Hmm.
it's coming in a big force in the US. I think they have launched how many new circuits? I think there's the Miami one that was launched. Was it last year?
Mhm.
And the new one will be the Las Vegas one.
Yeah.
And I understand it's gonna be a street race. So actually, let me try and see if I can pull up a few of those images. Uh, but
I
but uh,
really hate
but uh,
I
but tell
I
me
hate
what you
street
follow
races.
through. Yeah.
I hate street races. I really hate them.
Oh, why is that?
You see,
Uh-huh.
they tend to be a bit constricted.
Hmm.
But there's one street race which not so bad. It's called Baku.
Where's
Baku is
that?
okay.
Baku? Is that
Baku is a
Eastern
country called
Europe?
Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan.
Oh
Is
wow.
a,
Yes.
it's a street race. It's not so bad. The streets are wide. The worst is in Monaco.
The
Monaco is
Monaco one is a
horrific.
what? Is terrible.
Horrific. Even most drivers don't like it. It's only there because the people in Monaco are rich. But it's a horrible because once you don't need even there's not much skill in racing. Is as long as you qualify in a good place and the
Hmm.
team has good strategy, you're assured of victory. It's very constricted. You try to overtake, you'll slam into a wall. Appreciate Sharif Mustafa, our regular viewer, is here.
Oh, welcome, Shari Mustafa. We are discussing about
Formula One.
Formula One. So
Mm.
I'm actually
It's a,
looking at
it's
the
a, it's
calendar.
a street circuits
Uh-huh.
are only good for Formula E. The it's a electrical version of Formula One.
Uh-huh.
Because the Formula E, these are battery powered cars. So if you take a Formula E car and you
Mm-hmm.
take it to a normal Formula One race circuit,
Mm-hmm.
chances are it may not finish the race. But a street circuit is so full of so many corners. So
Yes.
A Formula E car is an electric car. Each time you slow down in a corner, it recovers energy.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's called kinetic energy recovery systems or regenerative braking.
And I
So
want us to come back on that aspect of electric cars and how they're able to sort of recover energy that they can be able to build up on. I think that I've been seeing some very interesting inventions around that.
it
Um,
existed over. Uh, it has been existing for quite a while, but it only came into prominence in 2011.
mm,
By 2011, it was already there.
I've heard of.
They used to call it CAS, Kinetic
Uh-huh.
Energy Recovery System. But now they
Ah,
have incorporated into other modes. So it's just in Formula, they use modes mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. Okay, but you see, due to Mercedes was so dominant.
yes.
So they introduced a certain regulation that the mode that you set during qualifying, the race mode, that mode is the one used during racing. Because this is what they used to do. During
Hmm.
qualifying, you tune the engine so hard
Mm,
to get the best time. But during race, you tune down because you cannot. There's something called trim. You cannot go into a race with the qualification trim because a quality trim, the engine produces so much power. If you go with it to a race, chances are you'll kill the engine. Engine life
Mm,
will reduce. So people need to turn up a lot of power. In Mercedes, Mercedes is my favorite team. They used to call it party mode. During qualifying, they switch the engine to party mode. So it
mm,
qualifies very high. Then when you go to the race, you tune it down because the party mode, when you use party mode in racing, the engine life goes down. And in Formula One, you can only use, I don't know, 3 engines per
mm,
season. If you go past that, you get penalties. So that was
mm,
activated in 2018 when Mercedes was at the height of glory. So they put a situation whereby the mode you put in qualifying is the mode you use in racing. So that is it. So those are they are called the race stream. Then during the race, there's
mm.
something called now power mode, whereby you are blending between engine power and how much of the battery you are withdrawing. So this information you get it from your race engineer because he's looking at your parameters, looking at how much battery power is available. So every team has its name. I know uh, Ferrari use something called SOC, SOC 7, state of charge.
Mm.
Uh, Red Bull, they have every team has its name. So the race engineer, maybe during the last 5 laps of the race, they'll tell you now, drain the battery. You are finishing him. The race is coming to an end. Then
So
what? uh,
let's discuss a little bit on sort of the upcoming races.
yeah.
Uh, I can see. So they are now prepping for. This is the calendar
First, we have
of
to do pre-season testing.
so this is a pre-season. This is what is going on now, or rather, it's gonna be starting sometime next week. Eh?
Yes, whereby now you have an opportunity to test the vehicle because the FIA, the governing body, is very strict
Mm-hmm.
on testing time. They are very strict on wind tunnel time. It's really policed. They
And
do a lot of policing.
and what are you tracking now? What's getting you more pumped up in
Mm.
preparation to this pre-testing and then the actual uh,
Well,
D-Day, which will be on.
pre-testing,
Uh-huh,
uh, over the years, Mercedes have had this issue of there's something called sandbagging.
uh-huh,
Sandbagging is where you go during pre-season testing and you drive the vehicle a bit slower than how the vehicle can actually perform to
uh-huh,
hoodwink your enemies, your competitors. So in 2021, beginning, they used to do a lot of sandbagging throughout. So they
uh-huh,
make other teams think, this time they are done. But unfortunately, for the 2022 season, they made a very bad vehicle. The vehicle was completely off. It didn't perform. It started getting better towards the end of the season, and the vehicle turned out to be somehow race specific. It would perform
uh-huh,
well in one circuit. You go to another circuit, the performance is off. And
uh-huh,
I was listening to the team principal, Toto Wolf.
uh-huh,
He was saying chances are
uh-huh,
their simulation instruments were a bit off. The simulator
mm,
tells you one thing, but when you go to the ground, the situation is completely different. And what
mm,
makes Formula One to be top of the sport, it's
uh-huh.
actually a development race
Yes.
because the
So
regulation
it's,
says you build your
mm,
own car. So
mm,
we have customer teams and we have factory teams. A factory team is one which builds everything on its own. A customer
mhm,
team mostly will buy engines from another team. So there are only four factory teams: Mercedes,
mhm, mhm.
Ferrari, Alpine, which is known as Renault outside here. Then
Renault. Uh-huh.
Red Bull used to be
Mhm,
supplied with Honda, but since Honda left, Red Bull took over their facilities, so it was
mhm.
called Red Bull Powertrains. So those are the
So they
four
sort
four.
of they have.
They
Renamed
build
their own engines or
they
what?
build their own things. Then they
Mm,
sell engines to the customer team. Like Mercedes will sell to McLaren, Aston Martin
yes.
Racing, and
Mm.
Williams.
And Williams.
Red Bull will sell to Alpha Tauri because Alpha Tauri is a sister team, is a smaller sister to Red Bull. Then Ferrari sells to Haas is and Alfa Romeo, Haas and Alfa Romeo, I think. Yeah, they sell to Haas. So
Uh,
they are customer teams and factory teams. That's how it works.
okay. Oh wow, it's quite
Mm.
interesting. I think once you get into the nitty
Yeah, when
gritties,
you
I
those
guess
nitty
that's the
gritty,
joy of it.
those
Eh?
nitty gritties, and it's actually a development race. I
So when you
think
call it development, what do you mean? And I wonder, maybe just expound a bit on that. And I also wonder, I would
mm,
imagine a lot of this, the Formula Ones and this kind of races, even things like the Safari Rally,
uh,
a lot of the data they gather from those races,
mm.
as much as it's done for entertainment, does it also, stream into production? Does that now information being used in building a production car that you'd see normally on your typical roads?
Uh, to some extent, what I know, the kinetic energy recovery aspect of a Formula One car, that was
Uh-huh.
what has been pushed to the current EVs
EVs.
and the
Uh-huh.
hybrids. But I
Okay.
think Formula One is so high up the ladder
Mhm.
that it's a bit hard for that technology. It will take time for that tech to get to normal cars. The tech is too much because a look, a Formula One car is race specific. A
Yeah.
Formula One car has to be set up for different circuits.
Mm.
A Formula One car has to be set up for wet weather or dry weather.
So that
Yeah.
means when the car is running on,
Mm,
sort of the regular circuit and on
mm.
a street circuit, they are tuned differently for those circuits.
Yeah, even if you play, let's say,
Mm.
these Formula One games, F1 simulators,
Mm.
they are set up. There's a setup option. You cannot take a
Mm.
setup for a high speed circuit like Monza,
Mm.
then you take it
Monza.
to
Mhm.
and you take it to a place like Bahrain.
Mm.
If you go that setup, you are basically going to fail. They are very race specific and weather specific. Like, for example, if you are starting off on a rainy circuit, wet
Mhm.
circuit, the vehicle has to be set up with a lot of downforce because the
Mm.
track is slippery.
To
And
ensure
there are
that there's
situations
no.
whereby if the rain gets too much, the
Mm.
race is red flag. They can't race.
Mm.
It happens. And then there's also tire strategy. Because what I like about Formula One, it is really a team game. There's what
Mm.
we call tire strategy. Tire
Mm.
strategy determines how you are going to change your tire because there are three compounds: soft, then there's medium, then there's hard. The soft tire has the highest grip, so the vehicle is faster, but it doesn't last. It can go only a maximum of 20 laps. 22 if the driver is very good at tire. There are drivers who are very good at tire management. That someone like Sergio Perez, very good at tire
Mm.
management because there's a certain way you drive and the tires last longer.
Mhm.
Then there's a compound called medium compound. It is not as grippy as the softs, but it lasts longer. Then there's hard compound. It has very little grip, but it can last an entire race. So it is up to the strategy team to decide which tire you are going to begin with, what time you are going to change. And there are so many factors that come into play. Like, ideally, when a vehicle comes into the pit to change, you lose ideally 20 to 22 seconds because
Mm.
the pit lane, there's a speed limit. A Formula One car can only go 80 kilometers per hour in the pit lane due to
Mm.
safety. Before there was no speed limit, so people used to drive like mad on that lane. They say no, no, no. pit lane. There's something called a pit limiter on the. If you can, I can share with you a typical F1 race wheel. There's something
Mm,
called a pit limiter. It
mm,
is normally pressed by the driver
yes.
to to actually activate let me just share it with you here to activate the speed limiter for the Formula One car. So he has to press it, and then the vehicle slow down to 80 kilometers per hour. Then the pit crew, the guys who change the tires, they have to be very fast. The average time for changing tires is normally okay. If you take 4 seconds to change a
Mm-hmm.
tire, that is an
Mm.
extremely slow pit stop. That is a
What?
disastrous pit. 4 seconds is a
Four
disaster.
seconds.
You'll even hear the commentator crying out, "Oh my God, this is a disaster." So the best pit stop, ideal, and it has
Mm.
been achieved once, is I think 1.85 seconds.
Man.
What? Let me, okay. First, I'll
But
send you a
let's
picture.
maybe let's talk about probably you can comment just generally about this upcoming season. Of course, some of the new races that we are expecting to have. I think we mentioned a bit of the Las Vegas street race that is coming up, but that will be later in the year. I think
Mm.
that will be in November. So give us sort of a rundown of this new season. What we should be
This will
looking out
be
for.
this will be a
Uh,
season for
mhm.
redemption for Mercedes Benz.
Okay.
This is what, because last year they lost
Mhm,
they could not, having lost the 2021 championship.
mhm,
2022 they came with a very fundamentally wrong car, and they
mhm,
lost both the championship, both the World Drivers Championship and the constructors. They lost it because of a faulty car. Uh, so
So
this
it's Mercedes will be looking forward to
to taking the
redeem its
title
name.
away from Red Bull. Red Bull created a beast of a car
Mm,
because the 2022 came with the regulation. There are vehicles called downforce cars. These are
mm,
vehicles made in such a way that they rely so much on the setup of the undercarriage to create enough downforce. Now, there's
mm,
somebody in Red Bull called Adrian Newey. He's the aerodynamist for there.
mm,
Now, most of it is being said that the last time downforce cars were made, it was back in 1990s. He was
mhm,
an aerodynamist by then. So most people are saying this regulation of the downforce played into his capacity. They
mm,
ended up creating a beast of a car. Mercedes Benz came up with a vehicle that was doing a lot of. There's a term called porpoising, whereby
purpose.
the vehicle bounces up and down due to aerodynamic effect. Red Bull got it correct. The vehicle was
Mm,
not bouncing. The Mercedes Benz was bouncing so much, especially at low speed corners. So when you're slowing down, the bouncing becomes too much, and you have to do adjustments, and the vehicle becomes generally undrivable. Then when they managed to adjust the porpoising effect, the vehicle began, there's something called a car being draggy. That
mhm,
means it has so much downforce that it can't even go fast. So it was, you fix this one comes up. So it was a lot of trial and error and data gathering. That's the what I like about F1. Is actually a research based,
it is.
as opposed to Indica of America.
Yes.
Indica,
IndyCar.
you drive the same vehicle, all teams same
Mm.
vehicle. Those one
Okay.
those ones are called spec series.
So
One
those are
specific.
more. They were more looking at probably the prowess of the driver because if
Yeah,
the
it's
car
driver
is safe,
oriented.
it's
It's
driver
that's
oriented.
driver oriented. So it is a spec series. Formula One
Mm,
is development, but the series that are under Formula One for the development, Formula Four, Formula Three, Formula Two, those are spec series.
spec series. Okay.
It's only Formula One that is development oriented. You may have a driver who was very good in Formula 2 because it's spec series. Unfortunately, he ends up in a bad team, a team with no resources. His performance is going to take a hit. A case study of this guy who joined the Mercedes last year. He was driving in Williams, a
Hmm.
very horrible car. You were always out. You there's some in Formula. There's something called outperforming a car,
Hmm.
whereby a car that is technically supposed to be number 20 because of its technical inferiority, but you
Hmm.
use your skill and you bring it to number 15 or number 12. You are considered a top driver because you are out driving the car. But in most cases in Formula One, the best car and the best driver combine. In fact, I think a top end car
Also the teams,
and
yeah.
a decent driver can win a
Mm,
championship. Yeah. But
mm.
then again, we say the best drivers go to the best cars. Again, that's the
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could look at it that way because I guess
Mm,
the driver will also be oriented to
mm.
to the specs of the car and all that.
Then
And
one
so
thing I like, you're saying?
mhm. You were mentioning about these street races.
Yeah,
So you're saying one, you don't like them, and then
yeah,
two,
mm,
what I wanted to know, how do they now compare? It seems like Formula One, as it is growing this franchise, it's expanding to more countries and more cities. Possibly, there's a now even a bigger target around America because I think they're again they're seeing the fan base there growing. Um, what does this mean now when they add more of these street races? They've they launched the Miami one last year. This year will be the Las Vegas one. I think everyone is looking forward to that. You've been saying the Monaco one has always been terrible. Many drivers, even the drivers themselves, complain about it. How
yeah.
does this now compare with these new ones that are coming on board?
Well, like for example, if they build street races and like the last one in America, I think was Miami, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, yeah, it's
It was quite
Miami.
decent. It was quite decent. It was, Monaco is very constricted. In
Yeah,
fact,
it's a small
they call it
city.
the Monaco procession.
Mm,
In fact, there's a guy called Fernando Alonso. He did a
mm,
very okay in Formula One. It's allowed technically, he hasn't broken any regulation,
mhm,
but he was driving very slowly. Ended up creating in Formula One there's something called a train. Ended up creating a train of cars behind him because you try to overtake, there's a risk of you slamming into the wall.
mm,
So he ended up creating a train. It was horrific. But if you compare the street circuit like Baku, Baku is
mhm,
very okay. It's competitive.
mm,
Miami. So if they are going to be street races and they are wide enough, I have no issue.
mm.
But as long as they should not build anything looking like Monaco. Monaco is a even when you are playing the Formula One game. When I'm playing career, I normally crash myself so that I can skip it.
Yeah,
It's because as long as you have not qualified top three,
yeah.
you are done. Or
It's a
if
very
you are,
constricted one, I could imagine. I mean, it's a fact of it. One being a European city, smaller
yeah,
roads.
mm,
I mean, I guess probably they have a better chance in a place like Miami with some of these wider streets. The
yeah,
American
those are
streets are a
okay.
lot more wider.
Mm.
Um, let's listen in a little bit to this video. I want to play it, and then I think
Oh,
as we wrap up on this one, let me see.
It's time for Formula One. We run the top, run the street and two. All of them and they're ready for war. You can never test my crew. What a race we have in store for us. The rise to the top, we live in the dream.
Great job!
Wow, so I'm looking forward to this one. And so, what would you say around the teams that are coming in? So, you're saying the cars that are looking to redeem themselves, you're looking at Mercedes. Red Bull is still ahead of the pack. How about the drivers and the teams? How is that shaping up?
we have a new driver in Williams.
Mhm.
Logan Sargent. He'll be the first American driver to be in Formula One. And now, Formula One has a lot of politics.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Uh-huh.
see, the revenue from Formula One is shared among 10 teams.
Uh-huh.
For you to join a team, the rest of the teams have to agree. They have to agree to allow a new team in, because
Mhm.
a new team coming in, that means reduction in the revenue split. So
Mm.
to cater for that, you have to put in Kenya we call it goodwill, something
Mm.
similar to goodwill of $200 million.
There's a
Yeah.
cattail there that is.
To cater for the
Eh?
fact that you are coming in, you want to
Yes.
reduce our revenue. So give
Yes.
us something to cover us for
Yes.
emotional damage.
Enterprises. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yes.
it is normally $200 million
God damn.
for you
It's an
to
expensive sport, man.
you have to. But now the when it comes to operations, before the the budget was open, so teams like Mercedes would really spend.
Mhm.
But now the the figure has been reduced to, it has been capped 147 million. That
So
is
this is
around budget cap. So that's around 15 billion, 16 billion shillings,
yeah, yeah.
Kenya
It's
money.
crazy. It's crazy. I'm sure that's
Listen, some time back, Mercedes was blowing 30 billion shillings.
man.
30. Yeah, because they had money, Mercedes, Ferrari. So the FIA said, listen, there are small teams here who
Mm,
cannot afford that money, and therefore chances of winning anything are practically zero.
becomes
I
zero.
remember in seasons like 2015, 2014, the only time you'll see another team on the podium is when a Mercedes car suffered a breakdown. He has a technical issues. That is where they'll just somehow squeeze through. Or
So
they had issues, but now they capped it to $147 million. That is the maximum you can spend, and still there are teams struggling to hit that budget. So it's a money sport. And now the politics of, if you want to join, you need $200 million upfront, because your presence there is reducing the split, because the revenue, whatever revenue is going to be made, is split among the teams. So you coming here, you are reducing the division of the cake. So you have to
mhm.
put some a fine for emotional damage. So it's there's a guy called Andretti.
Mhm.
He's former racer. He has money. He has his own racing team in indie sports, and they have been putting a foot on him. They don't want him to join. It's a It's a very tough thing. But the teams that Ford wants to come in, Audi wants to come in. These are big people. They can
Chicago
sort of
manufacturing.
budge.
Yeah.
They can budge their way through. But normally, those 10 teams,
Mhm.
they would actually fight very hard, because right now, from with the way a series called Drive to Survive.
Ah, yes, on Netflix.
Yes, that one has
Mhm.
what that's the one which has actually led to increase in revenues for the sport. So right
Yes.
now the sport has a lot of money. Back in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017,
Mhm.
no one wanted to buy a Formula One team.
Mm.
2008, 2009, no one wanted to buy a Formula One team. It was heady. I remember Red Bull. Red Bull was bought from Jaguar, I think, for $1.
One
One
dollar.
dollar. Eh,
So their
because they were.
fortunes, and I guess that's why they're a bit more bullish on entering the American market. Because America
Mhm.
is, as much as it in a sense, it might end up watering down some technicalities of it on the bid on an effort to popularize it, do the marketing,
Mm.
enhance the experience, more so to bring more fans. But I think it's now a game of how do you ensure that you don't lose the core of the sport, but then again you're making it more appealing to your regular Joe on the street, such that now you can bring in more fans and just make it a more commercially viable system. Was it bought by who was it? Liberty
Liberty,
Media
Liberty Media purchased it.
purchased a Formula One. Yeah, I remember
Yes.
reading about that.
Uh,
How long ago was that? Must be now about 4 or 5 years.
4 to 5 years.
Okay,
By this guy, he
great.
was headed. I don't know if he's still there. It's called Chess Curry. The gentleman called Chess Curry is the one
Just
heading
carry
the. Mm,
the Liberty Media now, and I guess that's why now they are entering. I don't know which other city they are bound to get into in America, but now America's got now what is it, 2 or 3? There's Miami, of course. Austin has been there, and now Las Vegas. So 3 races
three
in one
races in America.
country. Um, and
So
tell
it's
me,
they
uh,
want to make it they want to make it more of an entertainment show now, because
correct?
now if you look at the Formula One Facebook banter,
Uh,
it is now full of so much hooliganism. So people
yes.
say this bunch which has come in recently here.
I know the purists, the guy who
Mm.
are deep in the game and then deep
No,
in
we
the
really don't like
technicalities
this
of the
stuff.
engine.
Yeah, we
When it
try to
becomes
keep
to
it technical.
it's the same thing. I think when we used to, it reminds me of the days when I'm a big I enjoy a lot of jazz music, and I
Mm.
remember when it started becoming the concerts, for
Mm.
them to appeal to the regular person. Sometimes they have to infuse a bit of pop and
Mm.
bring in all manner of other you know
Mm.
um, genres that are not necessarily jazz,
Mm.
but it was a way to ensure let's pull the regular mwananchi in a bid to start helping them to appreciate. And but then sometimes this concerts then becomes who went to Safaricom Jazz International Concert or those kinds of jazz festival, but they are not there for the sport or for the music. They are there just to say I was there. And it's the same thing with this. It will be, oh, I went for the Formula One in Austin or in Miami. But they try to create all this experience. I mean, just think of something like Super Bowl. Do you think Super Bowl is more about the sport, or it's more about it's one of the most, if it's not the one single day, how much money those guys make? The tickets go up to thousands. A
The
single
Super Bowl is
ticket.
where we have during break time, performers will come and do their thing like
Yes,
Dr. Dre.
yes. That halftime show thing that becomes so popular. And then, so the discussion becomes about the halftime show and then the advertisements.
So they are
Where
not
they
actually
just
selling
add,
this. They are not selling the sport. They are selling the experience.
they're selling the experience. And that's what they're garnering for. I think Liberty Media, I think since they acquired the franchise, that's what they're looking now to do. And you saw with Miami, Miami became a big show. There were concerts on concerts pre and during the show. They had even built like I think a man-made beach or something. So it
And then
was
we have what we call something that never used to occur before. It was called a celebrity walk by, whereby
exactly.
celebrities will walk. And some some of us old school, we really hate it because some
Yeah,
celebrities, I don't know who came there, and they were quite snobbish. And they
yep,
someone told me, listen, the stars are the drivers and the cars. You are just a by the way. Mm.
exactly,
You are just a
exactly.
by
But
the
they
way.
bring they bring them in as more as influencers. That's a whole deal around it. That they
Yes.
have now come in. I'm sure they probably hire them to appear.
That's why
It's
it's
kind of
called.
like
That's why
appearance fee.
this is what happens when a sport is taken over by a media company. It's a
Yeah,
show.
that was the other thing. I was looking at it. It looked quite weird. I mean, I would
Mm.
have expected maybe a car company or
It's a
an
show.
organization in the automotive sector to have been the one that had bought the franchise. But it's a media company that has bought it. So that tells you more about what their intention is, and they're looking into. They're
And
purely
some
in the profit.
and
However, we,
some drivers generally don't like it. I
yes,
know someone like this guy retired last year, but one Kimi Raikkonen. He's like he used to say, "Me, I'm here to rest.
yeah, it's not
I'm
in
not
for
here to
the
engage in funny stuff." So basically, the world we're living in is make money out of anything.
yes.
Make money out of anything. If you can sit in front of a screen and call people names and make money, why can't you also make money out of Formula One? So
No,
it's
and I
trying
think
to.
there's value in the experiences, but I think they do need to ensure so they guard the true essence of the game in terms of the technical elements of it, so that those still remains true. How they end up balancing that, I mean, we'll leave that
I
to
mean,
them. But I think
yeah,
that's the good
as
thing.
long as we get to rest,
Yes.
I have no problem.
Okay.
The only issue I have with the FIA is when they literally robbed Lewis Hamilton in 2021. I
Mm.
think that was something just to create drama. Because Hamilton was winning it.
Oh
Then
yes.
they bended the regulations at the very last lap and he
Mm.
lost the championship. He was having hard tires which were old. So they created the situation whereby, when you are in front and you have the disadvantage of, see, when you go into the pit to change tires, the guy behind you may pass you.
Mm.
That's what they gambled, and it went off. And in fact, the guy at that time, the race director, ended up. Now this is where the politics is. He was fired.
Mhm.
Then they gave him his. I think they gave him his lump sum on one condition.
Mm.
He had to sign an NDA that he will
Ooh,
never say anything about what happened behind the scenes.
for life.
Never. He will go to the grave with it. You can imagine what happened. We are giving you a full lump sum,
Uh-huh.
but you have to sign an NDA. You are not going to say anything concerning what led to this decision being made. So
Man.
you can imagine the politics involved. It has some politics, especially this aspect of joining a new team
Yes.
coming in.
Yes.
You need 200 million because you are coming in to reduce our revenue. Because now there's a lot of money in Formula One now. Teams are reaping bid. There's now the aspect of balancing. Before it was the big team, the top three teams, which were making most of the money. But now it's sort
Mm,
of balanced out. So you're saying
okay.
we have now balanced out the issues, and now you're bringing in another person to feed on this cake. No, you will pay what we call emotional damage.
So
200.
and tell me, how do they then regulate, or because you said for Formula One,
Mm.
the specs of the car are not uniform. It's
Yes.
not like the Indy car where you're all
Mm.
using the same engine or
Yeah.
the same specs and those kind of a thing. So how do
Mm.
they ensure
Mm.
that they can now create that level, or
Yeah, it's very
rather
simple.
they can be
That's
able
why
now to measure who is good at something? How do they do that? Because it's
very
not,
simple.
it doesn't seem
The-
like apples to apples.
It's very simple. You
Hmm.
see, the reason why it's called Formula One is because one,
Mm.
the two words Formula One. Formula is the regulations book.
Ah,
One refers because it's number one elite sport. Now,
okay.
under the formula, there are two sets of regulations:
Mhm.
technical regulations and sporting regulations.
Mhm.
Sporting regulations have to do with what happens on the track and how you drive. Like
Mm.
if you go over the track limits this number of times, you get seconds or a time penalty. If you those are sporting. Then you have technical regulations.
Mm.
They will tell you this is how a standard Formula One car is supposed to look like. Like
Okay.
this is the maximum shape. I mean, this is the maximum dimensions of this component,
Mm.
but they're not going to tie you down on the shape.
Okay.
It can be like this as long as we take the measurements and the overall measurement is this, we are okay. How we are going to shape it, that is between you and your engineers. That is why we say that in Formula One, the design of a car is based on the team's interpretation of the technical regulations.
Ah, okay, okay.
Uh,
So they set the boundaries and say,
yes,
play
upper
within
limit,
this.
upper
Now
limit,
it's up
lower
to you
limit.
to be more creative in terms of how you
Uh,
achieve that to
uh.
ensure, of course, you
So
you,
let's
you
say
place
this
an
component
advantage
here,
to your team.
this component is 30 centimeters maximum. I can put it at 30, but shaped in a very different way. But it's 30.
Mhm.
You look at, in fact, there was a time, I think it was last year, but one, Mercedes had, they got caught up on the technical regulations. You know, those rear wing, there's a space in between. It has a certain, I'm not sure about a measurement, but there's a certain disc that when you push it, it has to go through without any interruption. So Mercedes, that space was a bit less.
Mhm.
They put that disc got stuck. They told this vehicle is off spec.
Mhm.
So they were penalized and they had to start at the back of the grid. So those are what we call technical regulations. Yeah. You stick to the
So those are the
this
ones
is
that ensure. Mhm.
yeah, it's called those are the technical regulations. You can this is the standard Formula One car. Now play along this maximum and minimum. You have a field of play. So it's up to you and your engineers to do what you want. Then, apart from the technical, within the technical regulations, there are issues like how many engines you can change, how many components you can change per season. Not just how many you can change after how many races. Let's
Mm,
say you need to go like 6 or 7 races before you can change the gearbox or something like that.
mm,
And these teams are very smart. They normally say, look, let me take an engine penalty. An penalty is, I think, is 10 spots behind. So if you qualify number one, then you take an engine penalty, you start at number 10. But some of these teams are so fast, they are so somehow crafty. They say, we'll take a new engine and begin at number 10. But the rest of those guys in front, their engines, they are not changing. Their engines are old. Our engine is new.
mm.
We will beat them, no problem. You take the. In fact, 2021, Mercedes took so many engine penalties. So it's about you and the
Just to
engineer.
ensure that they install a newer engine
New one,
compared
I
to the
know you know
vehicle
very
that are.
well because when the events proceed over the weekend, this information is normally put openly. So I'm taking an engine penalty. I'm number 10, but there are 8 vehicles ahead of me who have old engines. Cheap work. We'll take care of them. No problem. That's what happened. And
You
then
know,
I remember Ferrari. It was in Monaco. Monaco, I'm not sure which 2020, I think. They had a gearbox. They were they had qualified. They set up a best time, but somewhere along the race, they were looking for a better time. They had a crash, and the gearbox got damaged. So they had to decide fitting a new gearbox and begin at number 7, or repair that gearbox and retain your number 1 position. So they took a very bad gamble. They should have taken the gearbox penalty and begin at number 7. But then again, in Monaco, beginning at number 7 is a headache. So say, let's
mm,
gamble the gearbox and begin at number 1. They repaired the
mm.
gearbox to retain number 1 position, but the gearbox failed. So they never took part in the race.
Okay.
The
So they
gearbox.
would have taken the gamble of going down the race numbers and get a new one as opposed to repairing the
And
existing
try
one.
to fight back, to fight and
Yeah.
get at least number 4, 3. But now they say, let us retain our pole position because when you qualify number 1, it's called pole position. Let
Yes.
us repair this gearbox and retain pole position. But the damage was
Yeah.
so much that they managed to repair it. When the vehicle got to the track, the
Yeah.
gearbox box failed again. Now they lost everything. So these are the decisions that involve a race, a Formula One race. They are what you call the strategists. I know Mercedes has their base in a place called Brackley. Somebody can in Brackley can be monitoring engine performance in
Is
Brazil.
that in Germany or where? Brackley's
Brackley is
where?
in UK.
UK.
Mercedes F1 team is based in UK.
Yeah, is it
The
at the the
Williams
uh,
team
Williams team,
is in UK, a place called Grove.
Grove? Eh?
And
Okay,
then
yeah.
Red Bull is also in UK, a place called it has two names. Milton Keys. There's a place called Milton Keys. That is the home of Red Bull. Then people like Ferrari, those are retired. They're at home at Maranello. Uh,
That's in Italy.
uh, so it's a lot of the logistics is very crazy because when you are racing
Mm.
every 2 weeks, you are moving. Let's say from Bahrain, then you go to. Let me see. Let's put up that thing, that schedule.
Oh, the schedule. Eh? Okay,
Uh,
let me get that. The races, the calendar, present, share. Doo-doo. There we are. So we are starting off with Bahrain, huh, which is gonna be early.
so you are moving from Bahrain,
Mm-hmm,
and then you go to Saudi Arabia. That is
mm-hmm.
after how long?
Roughly 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Then
Mm-hmm,
from Bahrain, you go to Australia.
mm-hmm.
Then from Australia, you go to Azerbaijan. So this is a lot of movement. And then there are normally what we call, I don't know if this year there's going to be there. Last year, but they used to have what we call triple headers. A triple header is where you have one race every week for 3 weeks. So
What?
imagine moving the equipment through.
Mm,
It's a lot of equipment, by the way. The
I
cars, the
can
stuff.
imagine.
They are normally called triple headers, whereby you have one race every week for 3 weeks, then you take a 2 week break, or a double header. You'll have one race after a full week.
I
So
bet they must have their own cargo planes
they
and
have
of course
everything. In
private
fact, the
private
one
planes for their
that cost of,
teams.
yeah,
Mm.
it's and imagine you are doing this under the cost cap. So during that cost cap, they had to, obviously some people had to be fired, had to be relieved. People like Mercedes who were operating with a budget of $30 million, you have to release some people.
Is that
So
that cost cap is this also another way of ensuring there's some level of fairness?
yeah, it's called leveling the field. They call it
The
bunching the group, because
bunching
if
the
one team is operating on a budget of $12 million, another one operating at 30, the guys earning at that, that is looks very unfair. It's more than
yeah,
double your capacity,
yeah.
and you'll always
But
remain there.
it's interesting when you are explaining those technical elements and the sporting requirements, the technical elements and the sporting requirements, and also part of this
Mm,
capping that they have to put in terms of how much money the teams can spend.
mm.
You know, the immediate thought that came into mind was I think it's a perfect analogy about life.
Yeah,
Formula One is a perfect analogy about life. That life, we all have certain things that are the same across the board. We've got 24 hours every day, 7 days a week, all those elements. But it all comes down to what is the unfair advantage that you create for yourself based on utilizing the constraints that have been provided for everyone. So if you've got the 24 hours and another person also has those same 24 hours, it then becomes how best you utilize your 24 hours compared to the other person. So and again, after being given the technical specs, is how creative can you be within those technical specifications to create a more superior car that then gives you that unfair advantage? Because as we say in life is unfair. in
yeah,
business in business we always say that you don't operate on the concept of having fairness. It comes down to what is that unfair advantage you create for yourself to ensure you're always ahead of the pack. So I think it's a perfect analogy about life
yeah. It's
that
like saying
is
we have a 24. Each one has 24 hours.
yes,
But you see, it's possible that you have a car and I don't.
yes,
So it will be faster for you to get to town,
Yes.
but I have the choice of waking up earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
nothing prevents me from waking up earlier.
Mm.
Because if, let's say, you're using the expressway, you can drive from Matiriva to town in within 1 hour, the 45 minutes, or whatnot. So I cannot place myself waking up at the same time as you. Then I say, oh, this guy has a car. And what does my bed have a timer that ties me to the bed, preventing me from waking up at 4? No.
No, it
So we
doesn't.
say let's meet at 8. You will leave your house at 7. Me, I'll leave at my house at 5 or 4. So that we meet at 8. End of story.
End of story. How you get there
Yes.
is all about you. You could have
You
walked
can't
either by
say,
waking up early or
Andrew has a car and whatnot. Is there, does your padlock in your house has a timer that it opens up at 7? No. You can wake up at 5. Take a matter to be in town, but you can beat the jam and get there. So that you park your car and I'm there and we do our business and we close it up on that. So it's about making use of the resources, taking advantage of your, I say, taking advantage of your disadvantages. I
Mm.
remember a team. It's called. What's the name of this team right now? Racing Point. No, it's called Aston Martin. It used to be called Racing Point, and
Mm.
before Racing Point, it used to be called Force India.
Mm-hmm.
I used to admire that team. It wasn't my favorite, but I used to admire it for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a low budget team, very low budget team. In fact, there are days when they will come to the race and the drivers will be told, you compete, but be polite because you don't have spare parts. If you break this car, utajua spare itatoka wapi. That is how things used to be thick.
Eh.
There was a time they came to a race. That race, they managed to score a podium, number 3. That race weekend, they were driving with Sergio Perez. That
Mhm.
race weekend, they came to the race with. They were, by the time they were on their way,
Mhm.
their boss, someone called Vijay Malia or something like that.
Mhm.
He was fumbling for tires.
Eh.
We have no tires, bwana. Hizi matairi hazitoshi. This guy is fumbling for tires, but somehow they somehow do some maneuvering and score. In fact, I remember that time, that race. I think it was Baku. And talk of Baku, that car, the Force India car, used to be very good at Baku. They used to say that their method is this: we are not high performers, but you know what?
Mhm.
Let's ensure that we get points every
Mhm.
race. And you see, the one thing about a racing environment, most people are at their limits, and accidents are about to occur. That particular race where they were hustling for tires, Sergio Perez was, I think, at position 4. No, position 5. Then towards the
Mhm.
end of the race, two vehicles collided. He got himself into third position. Why? Putting yourself at a vantage position, making use of
Yeah,
those little resources that you have. Remember, guys, we don't have components. You crash this car, you are done.
you're
So,
done.
what you do, avoid being extra aggressive. Place yourself in a position whereby, in case something happens, we pick the scraps. That is what made.
Actually,
Yes.
yeah, thinking about that, I think one of the other things that come up in mind is sometimes it's not also about having every single resource at your disposal. It's also about learning how to work within the constraints. And I think that's where you find creativity actually. Where I mean, one of the reasons why some of the things that have been probably conceived in Africa work best almost in any environment is because in Africa we've got so many constraints that if you have to produce or develop a product, it's bound to be effective almost in any environment. Even the same thinking. I mean, one of the reason why probably if you take an African maybe to Europe or the US, the reason why they thrive is life there has got several advantages that they never used to have. So that makes them much more effective in a place where there's that level of abundance and prosperity, having land, being able to work with less, but still produce at a world class level.
Yeah, I remember during the days when right now Toyota in rally is called, I think, Toyota Gazoo something. They are running the
Oh yes,
Toyota Fit.
yes. It's called
But before
What, Toyota
Yaris,
Development. Yeah,
TRD,
TRD.
they are running a Yaris, I
Research and
think.
Development. Yes, Yaris is the one. And you saw it is it the one that won in the Safari Rally last year?
Yeah. Now, before that, they used to run the Celica. Now, during when they were developing the car in Japan, they will ship it to Kenya and give it to Ian Duncan to test it here
Mhm.
because they knew if this car can survive Safari Rally,
Yes, our terrain.
we are
Mm,
beating everything. So
we are
that's they
good.
used to ship it to Ian the Celica. They, in fact, they used to once it got they got sponsorship with Farmer's Choice. It used to be called the Flying Sausage. It used to be tested in Kenya.
I
Kenya
mean,
was the
that's what,
benchmark. If
I mean,
if this car can run in Kenya without breaking,
yes.
it can run anywhere.
I
But
mean, and
I don't know if I don't know if that is some sort of an insult to our infrastructure, or I don't know somehow.
I mean, I don't necessarily, because some of those roads are not the roads that you
No, no, yeah,
use
yeah, true.
typically.
Those are just
There's an
racing terrain.
off-road
These are just
off-road
off-road.
terrain.
The
Yes,
Kenyan
exactly.
off-road atmosphere
Yeah.
stands out. It's just,
Yes.
I think people like, it's maybe Mexico who can put a candle to us. But they used to say, if it can survive the Kenyan off-road terrain, this is a beast. We go. So they
Can
used to
survive
ship it.
anywhere.
They used to ship it to Ian Duncan. He does his thing, gives his feedback, and we are good to go. So
Improve on
it's
it.
all
Yeah.
about, and I don't know why Kenya government didn't take advantage of that.
That's what
They
I'm
could have
actually
been
thinking.
invited because right now we have a center in Germany
Hmm.
where they normally simulate all type of condition. That is but it is a weather simulator, not road simulator,
Hmm.
whereby it's a containment. You can test tropical condition. You can test like in the morning it can simulate snow.
Hmm.
Then in the next 1 hour it will simulate Sahara desert conditions. It's
Hmm.
just a container with a simulation. So I don't know why Kenya did not take advantage to be the center for rough road testing all over the world. If you are building a rough road car, let it be a testing ground. I don't know why
I mean,
they need.
even take it further,
Hmm.
trying to entice Toyota and
Yeah.
other
Hmm.
manufacturers to
Hmm.
even build at least their research and development centers. Have it here in Kenya. That could be a
Hmm.
place where you are having at least thousands of people, where
Hmm.
they're testing their cars, both commercial and
Hmm.
the ones that they put in these races. So, I mean, this could be a revenue earner. I mean, if we were to
Yeah.
position ourselves as a country much more strategically,
Hmm.
so instead of just go beyond the race itself, yes, we want to be the
Hmm.
place where WRC, Kenya, African
Hmm.
Savannah, where they do the safari rally happens. But go
People like
beyond there. Make sure there's already an industry created in and around it. You've got the
hmm.
race and you've got the research centers built here. So you've got Toyota, you've got the
Hmm.
Subarus, each at least with a research branch
Yeah.
in Kenya. I mean, one of the reason why Israel
Hmm.
is so successful is almost every tech company has a research center in Israel. You know that.
Yeah.
Check of
Yeah.
it, of the big five, the Microsoft, Facebook, each has a research and development center based out of Israel because they want to tap in that talent. For us, will be to begin tapping out at least the I mean, the environments that we have, our terrain is a God given thing that we didn't even have to make for ourselves. And maybe
Things
from
like
there we can
there was
draw
a
a
time
talent out.
this Paris Dakar race.
Yes.
whereby they rest through a desert or something like that.
Yes.
There's a
Those
time they had a
sands.
problem with security
Mm,
in areas of Dakar, Senegal. And I was
yeah.
thinking, Kenya, there's a place called Nyiri Desert. Nyiri Desert
It's-
is 11,000 kilometers square.
mm,
You can serve as a venue.
that's true.
11,000 kilometers square. That is a very big venue for a desert
Mm,
racing event. It
mm.
doesn't necessarily mean to replace Paris Dakar, but it will come in also as an option
It could come in
because
as an option.
desert
Yes.
racing, there's only one desert racing event, which is the Paris Dakar. I don't know of another one. If you approach this board, you say, listen, we have a desert here, and this place is safe. There's no danger, there's no nothing.
Mm,
It's called Nyiri Desert, 11,000 square kilometers. Come set up these facilities. You can even use it as a setup for testing for solar systems and whatnot.
yes. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we are not really taking advantage of our situations. There's a time somebody he did it briefly, but it he didn't get much support. I remember this scourge of the hyacinth.
Mm,
Somebody was using hyacinth to make organic fertilizer.
mm,
Ah, but it seems like I looked, his setup was quite small. Obviously, it looked just in the category of Zeo bike, something that is funded from the pocket. And I
mm,
was wondering how come this guys because now this is now food security related. You should have been having a serious a mega harvesting unit for the hyacinth, and then we can convert it into organic fertilizer. But uh, that thing just died. The way I've never heard of it again. So we have the opportunity to really do so many things in this country, but I don't know. I don't know. There are so many events here that that pass us. We cannot take advantage of things that are happening here. I found it quite strange. Like we have a sea, you can take advantage and build what you call a tidal power plant there. That is free power. A tidal power plant is it's okay. It's a bit technical to build, but it's not as expensive as building a dam
mm.
because these are just buoys which float up and down. So you're just harvesting that motion. It's not much of an issue. So there's so much. That's why some Zung was looking at us and say, "You have come to America to drive trucks. Are you serious?" So, but then again, we told him we are not. This is an ordinary citizen. He has probably tried everything in Kenya. So he coming to America is out of desperation. That was what we were being told. We are aware of all these things, but these they need what you call a system that works in your favor. Those tidal power plant and the desert racing, there has to be some authority that wants people to be empowered. So
Mm.
if it's not happening, well, you'll go drive trucks in America
In America.
and clean plates in I don't know Saudi Arabia. It's a survival.
Or even at the very least, clear old mama's DMs.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's not that you want to do that, but it is what it is. That's the situation we are facing. That's anomalies. In fact, we were discussing somebody. We said, what if the entire population of Kenya was replaced with the Caucasians? We need only 1 year, and everything will change.
I remember there was a time
This
there was a news.
country will turn into a superpower within 1 year. Is enough.
Yeah,
1 year is enough.
it
1
all
year
comes
is
down
enough.
to management.
Just management. Management.
It's management. That's what we lack, man. There was
Mm.
even one time I remember, I think, reading a news article of Germans had requested if they could have a part of northern part of Kenya,
Mm.
and I'm sure if they were to be given, just let's say give them to Rukana.
Mm.
You're not telling them to own it, but you're telling them, if you're Germans, you can go and resettle
Mm.
there. It's a
Mm.
hot place. But I
Mm.
bet you in a few years, that place will be producing food that will be coming down to Nairobi. That will be the new Nairobi that everyone wants to go to. Uh,
Do you know
that,
that
yeah.
Israel, if I may my information sources are correct,
Mm.
Israel bought soil from Kenya in 80s.
That's what they took to develop their places.
Hmm. Because Israel is practically a desert.
Yes.
So they sent ships to Kenya, they bought soil, then they are the best in the world in food production.
Yes.
That's why I
As
normally say normally I have misgivings about my skin color. We are unable to elect the right people. If you can talk sense, but of course, as long as you don't have what this called political clout, you're not dishing out money, you don't have a scandal, you don't insult people in public, you don't have some funny slogans. Some of them are practically vulgar. No one will give you a vote. Why do you think this guy from your place, Kivuta Kibwana,
mm,
he was too decent for the Kenyan system?
he was.
Yeah,
He
somebody who
was.
builds a multiple story hospital for 68 million shillings only. There's a hospital built in, I think, in Makweni, 68 million. A fully equipped hospital below 100 million. In another county, you'd have been quoted saying 2.4 billion shillings or something like that. This is below 68 million shillings today. And this is one of the few counties that passed the county national audit with flying
Mm.
colors. They passed it, not a coin misused to the letter. But when it comes to aspiring for the big office, he did not fit the system.
I mean, that's
You
a
know,
guy who
the
should have
system
been
is
the.
like a groove. If your shape doesn't fit, you don't
That's
fit.
true. That's
It's
true.
like
I
a
mean,
groove.
there are many good people that have actually gone into the politics, and what has happened is they have come
Mm,
out there as corrupted by the
mm,
system. So
mm,
you sort of can't even overcome
mm,
that culture and way of working, way of
mm,
operating that is there.
mm.
It's actually quite detrimental to go into it. You'd rather maybe see how you can make your small impact either in business or in other forms.
Yes, yes.
So
But from within, in fact, if I may just go into something very deep, uh,
mm,
there's a friend of mine who works at Wilson Airport. You remember that accident for the former VP when
mm,
it's a security that helicopter.
mm,
Someone said people in top positions avoid certain type of aircrafts there. So I asked him, because you work in Wilson, how do you avoid this issue? Very simple. Don't go into politics.
mm.
This is somebody who knows what goes on there. If you want to travel safely by air, avoid going into politics. So I think even
Smart
Kivuta was
system.
even looking at issues concerning his safety.
Yeah, you even now start asking maybe would you have been better off just being a professor
Yeah.
and probably supporting think tanks in policy development
Yes.
and these kind of things rather than being in that system, because that
The best
system will even probably taint your image.
the best way I can say is you set up some sort of enterprise that is somehow disruptive,
Mm,
a
yeah,
disruptive business.
that's
That
true.
is how you can
That's
do it.
true.
And invest in a bulletproof car and body armor. Mhm. So I think we've clocked one straight hour, another
Uh-huh.
Saturday,
And
and
as there are a few actually other topics that I wanted to introduce, but I think it's good to wrap it up there. At least I've learned quite a bit around Formula One. I think I'll be
mm,
looking forward to the next to the upcoming. Is it where Bahrain or you said where?
Bahrain,
Yeah,
Bahrain.
Bahrain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that will be next week. Next week, but one on the second.
Yeah.
But do they also do the screening of the testing, the pre-season
Yes,
test? Yeah.
yeah, pre-season testing is normally aired. It's a show
Okay.
on its own. It's
Mm,
actually a show on its own. So in fact, it's on the calendar, pre-season testing, with
okay.
all its dramas and whatnot. Oh, some vehicle ended up failing during testing and whatnot,
Mm, mm.
breakdowns, drama. And so it's one hell of a show. It's one hell of a show. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Keep us all posted. We are
No
looking
problem.
forward to that
No
show,
problem.
man.
Mm.
Hey, man.
Another Saturday,
Another
done.
Thursday, we've done it.
We are losing count, man. We are losing count slowly but surely.
Yeah, man. Let's keep it going. Thanks to the Mustafa Sharif, and I think there are two people that are probably logged in at this point. I don't know who the other second person is, but shout out to all you guys. Thanks for joining us for this live.
And we are out.
See ya.